passe l'artiste. Super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De i semifinale igjen!
Watch out, handball world. The Lusophone world is here and are taking over. It's a magical Friday for Portugal and Brazil. Lusophone, for those of you who don't know it. Alex, you know what it is?
Including me.
Lusophone, Alex, is the Portuguese language speaking world. Portugal and Brazil. Every day is a school day for us all, but what a day for them as they both book their spots in the quarterfinal with a game to spare at this World Championship main round. And coming up later, we'll speak to Sergio Arenillas, a commentator for Brazilian TV station Globo, to hear about his perspective on a historic breakthrough for the Brazil men's team. Chris here, joined by Alex, and we're going to kick things off, Alex, with a look at a re-emergence of a different kind from the depths of the physio's treatment table to the court again. Domagoj Duvnjak has returned for Croatia, and with it, the hopes of a nation as they beat Iceland. What a day.
That's crazy. It feels like the whole of Croatia was revived with Duvnjak. The empty stadiums that we've seen were packed to the rafters as Croatia dominated an impressive Iceland team in this tournament who, honestly, I thought would beat Croatia and would take a place in the quarterfinal, and now it's all really in Croatia's hands.
Yes, Croatia needed to win the game by 4 in order to put themselves ahead of Iceland if it came down to a 3-way head-to-head, which it looks quite likely it will between Croatia, Iceland and Egypt. Not only did they do that, but they beat them by 7, which would mean that they would actually go first in the group ahead of Egypt as well and avoiding France in the quarterfinals. So a double boost for Croatia. They still have a very tricky task, though, of beating Slovenia on the final game day on Sunday. But an amazing performance from the Croatians, who were just like, they were a team possessed. I said it over and over again in the commentary that Dominik Kuzmanovic was a man possessed, as he was literally screaming his lungs out every time he made one of his plethora of saves. I think 40% save rate in the end, 17 saves. But the whole team just came to life. Even Martinovic finally showed up with 8 goals. And you know, I really wasn't sure when Duvnjak was named in the squad whether he was going to play. I thought it might have been a little bit of a ploy to get everyone, hyped.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be assistant coach, and he's just there to sit on the bench and give the team timeouts, but that quite wasn't the case. He got on the court and got a couple assists. Obviously just came back. He was taking it easy and didn't need to destroy his body again, because those young guns in terms of Kuzmanovic, obviously Serna also showed up and was really good in that left back position, which has been missing for Croatia, and just the arena was on fire.
Oh, so good. There's such a great atmosphere, and what I really like when Iceland are playing games like this, because there's also the away crowd contributing to the atmosphere. They were shut up quite early by Croatia, but still it did provide quite a feverish atmosphere. And yeah, I mean, it is crazy what a couple of days in handball can do. And when you think about this triangle of games between Croatia, Iceland and Egypt, where Egypt completely outclassed Croatia, look a completely different level to them. Then Iceland go and outplay Egypt. And then you would think if they could do that against Egypt, they could also do it against Croatia, because there's, I think, a fair amount of similarity in the physicality of both teams. But there's just one of those days where, form books go out the window, and the players on the paper, it doesn't actually matter who's there, because Croatia offered something that it's really hard to account for. And the momentum side of things in handball really came to the fore as well, as they just kept piling on the pressure and really rode that for the entire opening 30 minutes in their best performance I've seen in a long, long time. And Dagur Sigurdsson, he is the cat who got the cream tonight.
And for Iceland, the players that really showed up in the last game, the win against Egypt, didn't fully show up this time. Hallgrimsson, in the end, he got 9 saves with a respectable 32%, but a lot of them came at the end, where Iceland kind of reduced the lead a little bit. And Palmerson, who had an unbelievable game against Egypt, 8 goals from 10. This time, 4 from 9. Not too bad, but not enough at this level. And I think the attack for Iceland wasn't. We talked about how they focused on defense, but Elver Jonsson showed that he's just not quite ready for the highest level in the attacking sense. Christiansen has been just non-existent in this tournament, which is not Vigo. Vigo continues to pop up, but Gisli has been non-existent, which is it's a little bit weird. I'm getting a bit worried about Christiansen, but it is Croatia's story. And on the other side, Egypt, of course, got a very, very important win against Slovenia, and I really thought that they were going to throw it away. The funniest thing happened, and I think we'll talk more about crowds in this tournament a little bit, because there's been a lot of complaints about ticket prices, about how fans are treated, and all about that. We'll talk about it another time. But Egypt and Slovenia were basically playing in front of an empty stadium for most of the game, and that suited Egypt. They're kind of a more comfortable team, better team. And then for the last 20-15 minutes, a bunch of Croatian fans started to show up with their drums, with their face painted, with a few beers on them, and started going nuts for Slovenia, who they wanted to win that game. And Egypt started to get rattled. It wasn't a full stadium by any means, but it was enough to get Egypt a little bit worried. And a 4-goal lead in the end got whittled down to 1. And Slovenia had the last attack. And they just fluffed it. It was a passive play in the end, and that's criminal, I think, to allow a passive play to happen in the last attack. I don't think it was called early or anything. It's
when you say it's criminal by Slovenia's attack,
by Slovenia to not get that to happen.
Yes,
to allow that to happen, not by the referees. Yeah. I think the referees put up their. There was. Because Slovenia got the ball, they took a timeout, there was a bit of action, and then the hand went up because time was running out. And quite literally, the last pass happened with 2 seconds left. So the hand doesn't, it's like, that's the...
They were the referees were in their right to give it, because at the same time, Slovenia were trying to kill time to get the last shot.
They wanted the last shot. Yeah. So that's what they were doing. And they got to that. And it came down to Egypt's defense did very well, and I can't remember if it was Jans or Vla that
the last breakthrough was Zarabets who broke through in the end, but it was the 5th pass.
But the last pass to him, the last pass was either Jans or I think it was Jans who it was met with 2 Egyptian defenders, and he could have got a shot away. There was a chance to get a shot away. It wouldn't have been the best, but he passed it on. Great call by the referee, and Egypt survived by the skin of their teeth. Basically secure a spot in the quarterfinal. They just have to beat Cape Verde, which I presume they will. Give their players a little bit of rest, and hopefully we see Ahmed Hesham come back in for the quarterfinals. I haven't heard too much, but Egypt have definitely suffered.
A week-long injury So
yeah, exactly.
But a very specific one. Yeah. Yeah, good win for Egypt. Bouncing back, I think, really well from that loss to Iceland. And yeah, it's set up really nicely in that group. I think Croatia against Slovenia, the final game of the day on Sunday, will decide it all. Iceland shall do what they need to do to beat Argentina. Egypt will do what they need to do. And then if Croatia win, then they win top of the group. Egypt in second place. If Croatia fail to win, then it's Iceland who win the group and Egypt in second place. So almost no matter what, unless Egypt completely mess up, they've got a date with France in the quarterfinal, which is...
And that's
what a
tasty
game.
matchup.
Yes.
That's a tasty matchup.
That is a very tasty
I
matchup.
like that. And hey, I had Egypt getting a medal. Am I fully sure of that? It really depends on Hesham. But this Egypt team is very structured. The defense is very good. They can slow down any team, make it happen. So it's great to see them come back to the quarterfinals again for the fourth time in a row, which is a really impressive run at the World Championships. It sets up a nice. That side will be really interesting, I think. Basically, who's it going to be? It's France versus Egypt, and either Iceland or Croatia against
either Hungary, North Macedonia, Netherlands, or even Austria. No, probably not. But even North Macedonia,
Hungary,
if they pull off a big result against France.
hey,
anything can happen. Anything can happen. But Hungary, the likeliest of the teams there to finish in second.
Yeah. Hey, Croatia now we're looking ahead into a potential medal coming from nowhere. So that's great. But all of that was not the biggest story of the day. The biggest story of the day was, of course, that Brazil qualified for the quarterfinals of the World Championship for the first time. The year that I put my money on Spain and count out Brazil. Brazil knock out Spain. It's beautiful to see. Let's just say I did it on purpose.
Yes. And to speak about that, we will bring in commentator for Globo in Brazil, Sergio Arenillas. Let's hear what he has to say.
We're joined by Sergio Arenillas from Brazil, who is a journalist and a commentator for Globo TV, which is broadcasting the Brazilian Games for the first time in quite a while. And what a tournament to choose to broadcast. Hey, Sergio, how are you doing?
Hi, Alex. Hi, Chris. First of all, nice. Thank you for having me. I've been listening to the podcast for a while, and especially now, just before the Worlds. As a commentator, I get to do a lot of things. So one day we're doing volleyball, football, handball. So we don't have always the time to watch all the games and keep up with all the news. So your work is really impressive. It really helped me out during the prep work for this World Championships. And you put it, what a way to come back after a few years. Now with Brazil making history and surprising us all, really. It was amazing. What a day.
Mentioned that you listened to the podcast. You might have heard then in our pre-championship podcast, Alex finally giving up hope on this Brazilian side. We've always been a big fan of this team, but considering the groups they were in, the potential path to this quarterfinal, having to work their way through Portugal, through Sweden, Spain, and Norway, it just felt like it was going to be too much for them. But here we are now with a round to spare, and Brazil have booked their spot in the quarterfinals of this World Championship. We'll maybe start with the game today against Sweden, a game where it felt like they were somewhat comfortable, like they really believed in themselves, and they really seemed to know that they belong at this level and have outclassed a very solid Swedish team.
No, and that was a shock because if you saw the game against Norway or even the game against the U.S., Brazil started slowly. Like the U.S., both Norway and the U.S., they opened up a nice lead early on, and Brazil woke up and came back. And today we were surprised. Me and Diogo, he's a former national player, Diogo Hubner. He does the analysis with me during the games, and we were like, wow, they are spot on into the game, and they build. I think like Sweden. I remember telling that on the broadcast. They were never down 3 goals to anyone in this World Championships, and suddenly Brazil had a 5-6 goal lead, and we're like, whoa, what's happening? And we were mentioning before the broadcast, no, Brazil is gonna Rangel is gonna be very important for us because he's like that 1v1 guy, and he really will have to step up. And he had this huge game. I didn't check the other lines, but I don't. Maybe Nielsen had something like that, but 20 saves. It was like, whoa, because you expect a good goalie to stop like the easy shots. But he's a guy that thrives on the most difficult ones, the 1v1, as I said. And it was like, man, he had the game of his life. For sure, someone at St. Raphael is where we're like, we're gonna have to work to keep this guy on our roster.
Yeah, he's been absolutely incredible in this tournament, really out of nowhere. He's been around, he's been at a fairly high level, but slipped under the radar, and he's been very impressive. But I think the story of the game was a couple of red cards. So first, there was a red card to Felix Müller on Sweden, which really weakened Sweden's defense, and it meant that Andy Nielsen was the only line player available. So definitely had some effects. But what fascinated me about this performance from Brazil is that when Brian Monte got a red card in the second half, for a second, it looked like Brazil were falling apart. Sweden went on a run. They scored 5 goals in a row. It was a 1-goal game. And finally, Brazilian coach takes a timeout, and Brazil come out like a storm and just get the lead again. And that's something that I haven't really seen from this Brazil team, but they've showcased this in this tournament. And like, what is the driver of that extra belief and the fact that they can take their knocks but still continue to win?
Oh, and that amazed us as well, because one thing that we can say was bothering us during the broadcast, and for sure the players over there, is that Brazil was unable to play consistent handball through 60 minutes. They either started really good and then faded in the second half. We saw that against Germany in the warm-up matches. Against Norway, they came back. Against the US, the same thing. Was like, man, we need 60 minutes. And I was mentioning, like, the guys started right on and they kept it up for the 60 minutes. Once Brian was sent off, we're like, man, 15 minutes, that's the 45-minute mark for us during this World Championship. Is like, things are either going to get great as they did with Norway, or they're going to slip out. Against Chile, which was an expected win as well. Chile came back, they tied the game. They had, I think, a 1-goal lead, and Brazil held off in the end. But today, when Brian was sent off, because Brian's such a huge piece in this team, he's our motor alongside Haniel. So I'm like, they're coming back. Like, they're tying the game, which they never did. Sweden only tied the game once, I think, with 1-1. And Brazil had those 4-goal leads, and then the team came back, opened up a 2-goal gap, and this never happened today. It was really impressive. Brazil able to keep on for 60 minutes against a tough squad as Sweden, and without Brian, because Brian was also, we were expecting him to have a good game somewhere in the championship, or like, there's not many games left. Like, are you going to really be the Brian? Although he's young, he's a reference for the next few years, and we felt like he was in depth a bit. And he had a late game against Chile, very good one, and today against Sweden from the get-go. But we thought that as well, that when the 45-minute mark came in Sweden, we're marching in. It was we saw that movie, especially against Portugal. I think there was no way not to think about the Portugal game.
Was there a point where you finally accepted then that we got the win here?
Yeah,
you could start to enjoy it.
Yeah, like 56, 57. Okay. Like, whatever. Like, I keep the score sheet. I'm like putting all like Chris 1 goal, Alex another one. I think the 4, maybe 5 goals I didn't mark anything. Was like, whatever, we're gonna do it. It's gonna happen.
That is what has really impressed me about the squad performance today as well, in a game which wasn't necessarily high scoring, 27 goals, but 12 different goal scorers for this team, which is extraordinary.
Only 2 players, like Petrus. He had a moment, I think, in the first half where he stole the ball, or I think he got the ball. He hesitated and passed it to someone else. And Leandro, which is a reserve, so he doesn't come very often. He came late into the game, but that was impressive. We mentioned that as well on the broadcast. Like pretty much everyone apart from the goalies and two guys score at least a goal. So you could see that hunger. You know, everyone wants a piece of it. That was really nice to see. Guilherme, our number 88, Borges, he always comes like as a lion, screaming and shouting and fighting for every ball. He was really impressive. Another game. It really blew us off. And it's our first time making to the top 8. That's something you wouldn't expect from this team that early, because remember, out of the 18 guys, 11 are making their debuts on the World Championships. So it's a huge generation transition that's happening now after not qualifying for Paris. So you wouldn't expect those guys to be that great that early. And they did. It's a young team overall. Like they are in Europe. They leave early from Brazil because Brazil doesn't have, I can say, a handball tradition. Like it's not on TV every day or every weekend as it is in Germany or in Denmark or whatever. Our league is pretty much played out between two teams. We have a player, for example, that played for a club called Praia Clube, but the club bankrupt. They're like not coming back this season. So it's a very loop-sided competition. So guys leave really early to go to Europe and play 30 games a season or whatever. So they educate themselves in their clubs and bring back their experience to the national team. And you just wouldn't expect those guys to come of age that early.
I always wonder that about Brazil, because anywhere, like Brazil does have a love for handball, and it has impressive players who continue to pop up. This is multiple generations of top players emerging, and as someone who's played in handball countries like the US or Ireland, half of those leagues are Brazilians. So there's a lot of love for handball and a lot of players, but I always wonder why there isn't like that bigger step within Brazil to kind of bring it to the next level, and whether this type of performance can help with that.
Handball is a very dear sport in Brazilian culture, because it's a sport you play in schools, like your physical education classes. You play volleyball, basketball, handball. And I don't know, folks love to watch. It's not on TV every day. Basically, we have the World Championships, maybe a Nationals Final Four on TV, and the Olympics. So even though folks don't get to watch handball all the time, once they have the opportunity, they love it, and they come, the ratings are good. And they really have this passion for the sport, which I think is great. And for me, it's definitely related to the school time. Everyone played handball a few times at school, girls especially. And Brazil doesn't have that much of a history in terms of medals and great performances. So in Brazil, we have a really monocultural culture when it comes to sport with football. It's pretty much football and everything else. So folks like to see whoever's winning, and Brazil's normally not. But but for sure, those kinds of performances really bring folks in. And like when Brazil defeated Norway in the first game, for sure, more folks tune in for the second game. Now qualifying for the quarterfinals, for sure, more folks will tune in against probably Denmark on Wednesday. So it's really important. It's really nice to be a part of this moment, because we know like 2 weeks from now, it's going to be something else. But at least for those 3 weeks, we're a story. You know, folks are having fun watching handball.
Yeah, and you never know what will come from it. I mean, think back to the Olympics and the impact that the women's team had on society, and we saw that on social media as well. We spoke to Gabi Moreski, who exploded. And I guess this is Rangel's chance now with his goalkeeping performances to become viral as well. But I want to ask you, like, from what you've been hearing among the community and what you're seeing yourself, you said it's the first time this Brazil team have broken into the top 8. What do you think makes this team that special? Why has this team been the one so early in their progression to succeed?
Well, I think they are light in a way, because once you have older guys, you have the weight of all the failures on your back as well. So you have, I've been to 4 World Championships and we lost. Diogo, for example, he was recalling once the game ended. Man, I remember when we lost to Russia by a goal, to Croatia by a goal, and were sent off the tournament. So those guys, they have their experience and their club experience, but when it comes to nationals, they don't carry that weight, that pressure. Like Brazil never won before, so you don't have to follow anyone's footsteps. They are now carrying on that flag. So I think that makes a difference to be this young as well and be bold as they are sometimes, that recklessness, they have to, man, let's play and whatever. Sometimes it works out just fine, as today with defeating Sweden, and sometimes you say, man, how could you blow off this lead against Portugal? But I think that's the thing. They're gaining international experience as well. But I think, for example, now against Denmark, no one believes they're going to win, but who knows? Maybe it happens. They can lose by 20 or they can lose by 1 goal, maybe win it. I think that that's an important thing about this team. They don't really have to match anyone else's performance. I think their mission is accomplished now. It's just to have fun, enjoy the opportunity to play Denmark and to play in the main round, and who knows what comes.
That's assuming that Portugal get the result they need against Chile, and as you know,
I think they will.
We don't want to count it out just yet.
Yeah, of course, yeah. The Costa brothers, it's really amazing. We were watching the game before broadcast today against Spain and Portugal. We're happy for them as well because they are pretty much Brazil, even though Brazil has a longer sequence in the World Championships. It's our golden generation maybe as well. So the guys are pretty much the same age, the same level of experience playing together. We have Edney at Sporting as well. But it was nice to get a group with Sweden, Norway, Spain, and to have Portugal and Brazil coming out of it. That was unexpected. I was looking at my research and we had France, Sweden, Norway, and Spain that made to the top 8 in the last 4 World Championships, and 3 of them are out to Portugal and Brazil. That's amazing.
I was down on Brazil for no reason, but this new generation is giving me hope. I'm excited, and honestly, the game against Denmark, going into against Sweden, I had good hopes, but I was pretty pessimistic. Sweden are a top team, and honestly, this Brazil defense and Rangel in goals is actually something that is strong and powerful, and they can at least give a shock to Denmark for a little while. At least I hope.
Yeah, pretty much like Italy, for example. They started the game well, and in the end, Denmark did Denmark things. But who knows? Once you're up 2-3 goals, you get that extra boost. And for us, it's incredible. You mentioned early on, Brazil will have a game to spare. That's more than the qualification itself. Brazil never has a game to spare. We were we're gonna do the maths up until the last game of the main round, and Brazil was helped out by Portugal, tying against Sweden and now defeating Spain. We're there's no way we're gonna be qualified to the quarterfinals, have a friendly game against Spain now in the 3rd round. It's just incredible. Even the schedule itself, because Brian, he rolled his ankle in the Germany games, the preparation games. And I remember talking with Diogo, and Diogo, of course, always talking with the players, the staff. And they were no, maybe we're going to spare Brian against Norway and to have him 100% against Portugal because, Norway, we're not counting on those points. And suddenly he comes in, Brazil wins the game. Portugal is just another game, the game that we were all hoping Brazil would win, and Brazil did it. And now against Sweden, no, maybe we lose to Sweden and then we win against Spain because we play more often against Spain. And then Brazil defeats Sweden. There's no logic in this team. Even the US and Chile, you were no, those would be cool games, warm up for the main round. And no, they were close games. Brazil had to come back against the US. So there's no logic in this team. We don't expect anything else. Now, whatever happens, it did.
Set us up very nicely, I think, for the knockout round. We always say the World Championship is made for teams like this, and the fact that we have at least one and probably 2 non-European teams in the quarterfinals is really, really nice. So
for South America to make to the
exactly, yeah, it's phenomenal, and hopefully it won't be the last we see of this team. I mean, the the future is bright for them. And Sergio, thanks so much for joining us and chatting about it. If they do beat Denmark, you can expect another call from us, okay?
I'll be happy to hear from you guys. Really, thanks for the invitation. Once again, congrats for your work. It's really impressive. Hopefully, we'll get to chat. Who knows?
I'm sure at some point down the line.
One of the greatest upsets in sports history. Would be great.
Thank you, Sergio. So thank you to Sergio. Lovely chat with him, and you can feel the excitement in the air, Alex, can't you? On this podcast now, we had Marcio on talking about Portugal, Sergio on now talking about Brazil. Lusophone world has entered the handball chat. You know a new word. Everything's looking upwards. But we talked a lot about Brazil there. Portugal's win, though, over Spain. I really enjoyed that last 15, 20 minutes. Purely because it felt like a graduation for Portugal. Like they came up against that tricky Spain, who on a couple of occasions looked like they might have been edging their way back into the contest, but Portugal had the answers every single time. And the 6-goal win in the end, maybe looks a little bit kind to them, but they really did deserve the win.
Kiko Costa is all I have to say.
Yes.
Minute 33, it was 19-16 to Spain. Then Portugal scored 6 goals in a row without reply. 5 of those were from Kiko Costa. And then he added another one on top of that in that run to bring Portugal out of a deficit against Spain, who were pretty good. I don't have too much to say about Spain here. They didn't fluff it. I think it just shows that their squad is it's not quite ready. That they have the talents that have been integrated, and that's what we said at the start of this tournament. Like, it feels like those generations aren't matching up in the right way as they are doing for Portugal, where the older generation is still at their peak. The new one is already impressing. I think for Spain, the older generation is a little bit older, and the younger generation is just a little bit younger.
This is the problem with the post-2021 Olympics for Spain. Too many players held on for too long. They said, 2020 Tokyo/21 was supposed to be it, but then too many players wanted another one, and it has come back now to bite them in the backside.
Yeah, it's all Guardiola's fault.
They got a bronze medal at the Olympics, so fair enough, but for this particular championship, cost them.
Yeah, amazing for Portugal. And at this stage, they've just looked supreme at the championship. And I think this performance by Kiko Costa, who hasn't been at the highest level, I would say, in the whole tournament that we've seen him perform for Sporting, for example. He's still 19 years old, which is crazy. Talking about skinny guys dominating handball, he is another skinny guy who he's skinnier than Gietzel.
He's only 19.
Not saying something. He is 19, but he's jumping through, barreling through. He's doing great. Martin Costa hasn't had the tournament, his best tournament so far, so there's still something to go there, but Salvador is popping up, and he had a great game. And I just I do have a fact about Salvador, which came through our Twitter a while ago. I wanted to say, but apparently, so Sporting in Portugal is counted as a very posh club. So they're the Chelsea, they're the Fulham of Portugal. Posh club, the supporters are posh. And in Portugal, Salvador is one of the poshest names you can get. It's the equivalent of a player called Archibald playing for Chelsea and leading them to the championship. So
it is savior. It's like a indirect way of naming a messiah. Yeah. We did we talked about this, didn't we, last year? Because there was Salvador, and there was somebody else who had 2 names.
There was,
who had basically the opposite of that, who Portugal came up against. I'm struggling to remember who it was, but yeah, that is Yeah, well, he does have the look of a posh kid who's like still in his gap year.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He's gone to find himself in South America, and he's kept the haircut.
Exactly. He's a private school boy who's the captain of the sports team and has gone away and got a few tattoos and a haircut and a mustache, and he's come back to show off to his friends about his gap year.
And he's a beast of a man, though. And I think I'd rather have him on my team than play against them.
I'd like to take the last few minutes to just shit on Sweden a little bit, if that's
Go
okay with you.
Oh, yes, go for it.
I wanted to leave it out of the Brazil chat because I got in trouble a little bit from the Brazilian fans on Twitter when I posted kind of the victory celebrations of Brazil, and in the comment I said that they, I complimented Brazil, but I said they beat an uninspiring Sweden team, and I think a lot of Brazilian fans didn't take kindly to that, kind of saying that I'm diminishing Brazil's performance. And I don't think so. I think Brazil were fantastic and have been fantastic in the tournament, but in this case, Sweden were fucking shit. They're fucking shit. Oh my God, they were slow. Felix Muller got the red card, which was a stupid red card, hit him in the face. Then their defense was falling apart during that period. Oliver Shefford, Brian Monta just strolled by Shefford a couple of times. And the Rangel goal had an amazing performance, for sure. But then the Swedish players just got scared to shoot, scared to attack for a large part of the game. And they had no belief that they were going to score for a good 40 minutes. And finally kind of turned it around for a little bit. And then there's a moment that, again, don't know how well it was received, but I think it really pissed me off. And this was the score. There was about 4 goals in it. So Sweden's still in the game, probably about 7 minutes left. They turn over the ball. Gottfriedson passes, and it's not Gottfriedson that loses the ball, but Gottfriedson, a Brazilian winger, gets the ball, starts running up the court, kind of on his own. And not at the fastest pace. Gottfriedson is running there at a light jog to not even with he didn't want to even disrupt that Brazilian winger who put the game to bed. That was the goal that put the game to bed. And Gottfriedson is just jogging, looking at this winger. And by the time that Gottfriedson gets to the 9-meter line, the winger casually steps in front of him to take a shot at a slow pace. And Andy Nielsen from the line sprints back and it gets past Gottfriedson, who starts 5 meters ahead of Andy Nielsen, one of the slowest players on the court. And just, it doesn't how many times have you seen a defender sprint back and make that tackle in front of or get the offensive foul? If you really, really care and really want this and you haven't given up, that's what you do. And that moment really pissed me off. And it summarized the Swedish performance for me.
It's a disaster for them, being knocked out in the quarterfinals. Yes, no Phoenix Clar, but you can't hang your hat on one player, as we know, in this sport. And I wonder now if that will spark a little bit of a clear out from Mikael Appelgren as coach for the future, as they look towards 2028 and the Olympics and think, okay, which guys actually can't contribute anymore?
Yeah, the Swedish players actually agreed with me. The comments, let me read the quotes. Mikael Appelgren will go home and be ashamed. Jim Gottfriedson, one of the 3 worst games of my life. It's a disaster. Albin Lagergren, it's a fiasco. And Brazil did that to them because Brazil were fantastic. Let's not diminish that.
On Brazil. Brazil. Yes. That'll do it for our mid-main round look back. Still some things to play for in the final round of matches. And we'll be there to review them and then look forward to the quarterfinals next week. But until then, thanks for listening. For myself and Alex, it's goodbye.